Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Oh boy. All right, my name's Sam. I'm an alcoholic. This is my home group. And my sobriety date is October 15th, 2011, so I just celebrated 3 years a couple weeks ago. Thank you. Let's see. I have a sponsor, Josh W. Will be here shortly. He's on speakerphone right over there. Let's see. I guess what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. What it was like, I was young and I wasn't comfortable being me, right? So I always had this sense, even like as far back as I can remember, that there was always something missing, that there was something that wasn't, that there was something more that I just didn't have, you know? And I know I hear it all the time, like I'm not the only one that feels this way, or felt this way. But I always felt that way. And when I was little, what I did, I would look for things to make me feel better. Like, little things, toys, whatever. The thing that keeps popping into my mind was an 8th grade shell top, the white shell top Adidas. Those were like the hot thing. And I knew that if I had the shell top Adidas, I would be everything would be perfect. And I got the Adidas, and I still felt bad. And it was so that's kind of that's what I did. I looked for things to help me feel better. So when I think the first time I got drunk, I think I was 14. It was summer, I was up at the cabin, and the older kids across the street, I remember it was Mike's Hard Lemonade and Zima. It was when Zima was still around. And we were drinking amaretto out of the bottle. It was lovely. And, I got caught that night. I got caught drinking, and no consequences. So, I don't know if my dad felt bad for me because I was, I felt, I didn't feel good the next day or what, but he didn't. But what I remember from that night is me, who's never comfortable. Once I had the alcohol in me, I was comfortable with these people who I would, older people, people I looked up to I thought were cool. I felt comfortable around them, and, we were all laughing, and looking back, they were probably laughing at me. They were 5 years older than me, and they probably just thought it was funny, like getting the dog drunk or something you do, But that feeling is what I remember. I felt okay, and I never really remembered feeling that way. And I didn't start drinking a lot. In fact, I don't think I got drunk again for another year and a half after that. But what happened was I moved to Spokane for a hockey thing, and my parents didn't go, so I went and I lived with this lady. She volunteered herself she had extra room, and I basically just lived at a room. And in high school, that was all I could ever ask for, right? I had freedom to do whatever I wanted, and I had a little bit of money because my parents were there. They felt like they needed to give me money, so they did, which was awesome for a 16-year-old. I had a car and all that stuff, and I had a great time. I'm not gonna lie, it was awesome for a while. But things that went downhill were my school, which I had always gone to good schools, and that was always really important to my parents. But I had always done good in school up until then, and I had always excelled at hockey, which is why I was there. And those are the first two things, well, maybe not the first two things, but those are the biggest things that I gave up in search of, to drink or, to feel better. And it went downhill fast as far as those things go. In school, I was a honor student at a private school in Seattle, and I went to Spokane, and I was in a, kind of a not very good public school, and I was just scraping by, and that's how I did my entire high school career. But as far as drinking goes, it escalated kind of quickly. I would start, the beginning of my first year away, I would be drinking on weekends with my team. We'd have parties or whatever, and I'd black out all the time. And from there, it was, I can drink Wednesdays, because in between the weekends, and then it was like Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then whenever I could. And so I was basically, it says in the book, more or less constantly drunk or something like that. I don't expect a good quote out of me. But that's what I wanted. I always wanted to be more or less crazy drunk. And I couldn't do that and get by. I was afraid of getting in trouble, whatever. I couldn't do that. So what saved me there, as far as that was concerned, was weed. Because I could smoke weed all day, and then I could get drunk at night, which was acceptable. And that was how I lived for most of, until I got sober. That's what I did. And, the exceptions being weekends, holidays, and days I wasn't at work or school, then I could drink all day, which was, I like that. But I guess what happened was, I meant to bring my big book. In the beginning of Vision for You, it talks about the conviviality and the friendships and the good feelings and the creativity that drinking brings, and that's what it was for me. That's what I felt it was, and I had all those good things. But eventually, it was just a way to get through the day, because I was miserable, and I never got to the point where I thought about killing myself, but I thought a lot about dying, what if I just got, in a really bad accident that wasn't my fault, and I didn't want to be there anymore, I was unhappy, and, the only answer I had to that was drinking, and, now I say fortunately, but, it was pretty unfortunate. I got a DUI, and not far from here, over in Fremont. I was at a bar crawl. I had a shirt. I was wearing the shirt, and you check off all the bars that you go to. Still wearing the shirt, and I turned myself in on that. I was this close to running. I got out of my car. I had bent my license plate up, and I was going to drive away. And I don't know what stopped me, but I ended up calling 911. I hit a family. A mom, a dad, and less than 1-year-old child, and I was just going to run away from that, and because I was worried about me, I was worried about saving myself, and so from that was December 10th, 2010. From December 10th, 2010 to October 14th, 2011 was the period of time the only period of time in my life when I had told myself I need to quit. And tried. And that period of time, I failed miserably. And also, especially the last month, was the most, depressing, and also the most, I got destroyed that month. I used more that month than I did any other time in my life. And I don't know if that was just the demoralization from not being able to quit, just admitting defeat, or what it was, but, it was the harder I tried to quit, the worse it got. And that brought me to, I wanted to talk a little bit about our home. This is our home group. I love it here. We ask the speakers to dress up when they speak. And so I chose this outfit today because this was what I wore the last time I picked up and when I admitted defeat to somebody. So the last time I used was in the parking garage at Sea Park at the Seattle Court downtown at 8:30 in the morning before my sentencing hearing. And immediately after that is when I have to pee tomorrow in a cup. I better tell these people that, So it actually worked out it worked out better that I was honest the day that I was, the 14th, and that's why my sobriety day is October 15th. That's not how I wanted it to go out. I wanted to go out with, I would have planned a real big party. I would have been, I got real sick or something, you know, how would we have planned our last drink, right? It would be glorious, romanticized. It would have been awesome. But it wasn't. It was desperate and sad, you know. I was huddled down in my driver's seat because I was sure there were cameras and the judge was going to look at it or something. I don't know, but he hit me on the head with the sentencing. You know, he said, you know, I mean, as far as for first DUI, he gave it to me. And, yeah, he said I had to go to one AA meeting a week for 2 years. That was, I mean, yeah, thank you. I'm glad you can relate, yeah. No, I mean, so basically he was sentencing me to, like, a life of misery. I mean, and of course I was planning on drinking still, right? Like, I was planning on working the system the best I could. I had to go to treatment. I went to Lakeside Milam, and, you know, that was awesome, actually, because I went in planning on working the system, and the first day they sent me to a meeting, and I made the mistake of listening. And I heard, like, what I felt. I did not hear my story at all. Like, this was kind of a hard meeting, and they were talking about stuff that I'd never done. But what they did talk about was, like, the feeling of despair, you know, the hopeless state of mind and body that we suffer from. And I understood why they did what they did. I never did exactly what they did, but I had the same motives behind my drinking that they had behind what they did. And so first meeting, I asked for a sponsor, and I got a guy who I never called. So the second meeting, I went to the sponsorship coordinator, and he hooked me up with my sponsor that I have now. And that was probably the best thing I could have done in early sobriety, because he immediately got me into service and immediately got me into working the steps. Because once they took my only answer, you know, alcohol, away from me, then I had all these feelings that I had suppressed and, like, these emotions that I hadn't felt for years and years, and they came back. And I was able to go through that stuff with my sponsor and, you know, eventually do a fourth step where I worked through all that stuff. And I'm doing my steps again right now, so I'm in the middle of another fourth step. And I think a testament to how this program has changed me was I had a lot of difficulty finding resentments. I mean, I still had some, and I'm not, like, trying to sound all pious, but, like, I had a hard time, like, finding a lot of new resentments. And there's a few, and I'm sure there's stuff I missed, but, like, just my overall outlook of life has changed. I'm not so much worried about, you know, I understand that life happens, and it's how I react to it that I have control over. You know, I have control if I want to react in a negative way or a positive way. And so, you know, I do get resentments, little ones, but I've been able to, you know, by working the steps and coming to meeting the stuff, been able to get through that stuff and not dwell on it and not let it, you know, be a seed of something evil inside of me. And so much good stuff I wanted to tell you guys about. Worked the fourth step, and I don't know, today I do a lot of service. I'm a selfish person, and the second I wake up every morning, I'm living inside self, and I'm not good about, like, the daily stuff, you know, the daily prayer, the daily meditation, whatever, waking up and reading something. It's not me, you know, I'm not usually awake till 2 hours after I leave my bed. But what I do know is that I learned it here, is that, like, when I'm miserable, when things are bothering me, it's not the things that are bothering me, it's me. And so I know I need to work on these things. And this program has given me the tools to take care of that stuff. And usually it's easy, way easier than I think it's going to be. It's usually just talking to somebody, picking up the phone, talking to somebody, going to a meeting. And I do a lot of service because I need to get out of myself. Being there for somebody else is the best way, like, it's like a selfish way to help somebody, because it helps me when I help somebody else. And these are things I never, ever would have thought I would hear myself say. You know, I always thought I was a good person before, and maybe I wasn't a terrible person, but I was always selfish, and I always took what I could get and never gave anything back. So I guess today I'm grateful For everyone in this room, I love you all. Greg, is what I'm saying about you. I just distracted myself. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful I've got the answer from you guys, and I'm grateful for the reminder that I need to keep doing this thing, or else I'm just gonna end up miserable and sick again. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm short. Hey guys, I'm Emily. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is 3/26/14. This is nice. And my home group is Shanty Treasures on Saturday evenings. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I'm super thankful to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought for a second I was not going to be able to make it, but I'm here. So, let's see what it was like. I come from a family of drinkers and users. From the time I can remember, was always searching for a way to fit in. I didn't feel like I was accepted by people. I don't know why. And I could never figure out why everybody else had it together, and I didn't, even from a really young age. So I searched for acceptance or love or whatever in lots of different ways. I was the performer. I would put on a show and make people laugh, which made me feel good for a second. But then when I got by myself, or even with people who I thought were my friends, I was like, this isn't the real thing. I don't really get it. I didn't necessarily start drinking until I was a little older. I was 16. And then I've heard that some people start really early. And then it, kind of went downhill from there, or uphill and then downhill. I was drinking. Marijuana is also part of my story. But I finally found a place where I would fit in. Not necessarily that, the people that I drank with were really good people and we, loved each other, but that we were all having fun together, or I just found a reason to not have to care about anything. I didn't drink a whole lot in high school. When I drank, I would get pretty drunk. I remember showing up to my graduation rehearsal day, super hungover. And I was like, yeah, this is the rest of my life. I can't wait. This is good. This is good. And then college. College was a mess. I went to Wazoo for a year. I only lasted a year. I remember I went there to visit, and the weekend I went to visit with my friends was maybe, the most messed up I had ever been. I was drunk. I was, gone for the whole weekend. I came back. I had to, miss school for a week because I had pink eye in both eyes. And I was like, Mom, I want to go to that school. Yeah, totally. So I went for a year. I gained 25 pounds in 2 weeks. And I was having the time of my life, man. I was like, yeah, this is good. College, woo! I was dating an older man who bought me alcohol, so it worked out really well. And then I decided after that first year that, college away from home wasn't for me, so I came back. I went to UW-Tacoma for 4 years and couldn't graduate because I would drink the little bottles in class. I wouldn't even, put it in a water bottle to hide it. I would take the little bottles and drink. I would, go behind my backpack. And it was good. It was I thought that was good. I thought that was what life was like when you're in college. That went on for a while. I drank a lot. I was working at the little gym with kids, which is, really bad to show up really hungover. And, it worked for a while. And then I told my boss, I was like, you know what? I just can't do this. I can't do it anymore. She said, don't come in tomorrow. So I basically got fired from that job now that I look back on it. Then I worked at Victoria's Secret because I could be drunk at work if I was at Victoria's Secret. I sold some credit cards. I had no inhibitions. I was like, buy it. You'll love it. It's great. I ended up... oh, my God. That was a mess. I ended up ending a relationship and getting really depressed about that. Went on some sort of, bender. Showed up to this Victoria's Secret job that I was now a manager at, 3 hours late, blacked out drunk. Somehow managed to turn off the alarm system. My mom had to come pick me up. I was 22, 23. I was an adult. And she's walking me out of the store, and she's telling customers as they're walking in, don't worry, it's okay, she's just drunk. And I was like, it was good. Still, that didn't matter. I was like, okay, this is kind of, not so good, but it's okay, it's life, I'm still in college. And then I ended up going back to the little gym, and I kept drinking. My bosses there were like, girl, you need to shape up or ship out. This isn't working. I got a DUI. I kept drinking. All the things that should have been red flags to say, this behavior is not normal. What's going on with your life? But I just couldn't. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to take responsibility for anything. So I continued to not. I acquired another boyfriend, because that's how I did things. If I didn't have a lot of alcohol, I had to have another person to be like, you're going to be okay. So I was dry for about 6 months with the help of this person. He just didn't drink when we went out, so I didn't have to drink. After 6 months, I ended up drinking again, and I guess you could call that kind of a relapse, but it was really bad. It was not good. Really bad, not good, the same thing. And so I kind of knew that something needed to change. So I checked out an AA meeting down in Renton at the Serenity Hall. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. If you've been to the Fremont Fellowship Hall, it's very similar. And I was like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if this is my thing. So a relationship ended, got online dating, and I asked this guy, I had mentioned that I didn't drink in my profile, and he asked me if I was a friend of Bill W's. And I was like, yeah, that's my ex-boyfriend. Because I dated someone named Bill W. And I was like, how do you know him? I was like, we dated. How do you know him? He's like, yeah, I dated him on and off too. It never really seemed to work out. I'm like, I was like, wait a second, hold on. There's things I don't know about this man. Oh my gosh. Come to find out, he's talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. So we ended up going out on a date. Our first date, he made me dinner. Our second date, we went to the Fremont Fellowship at 10 p.m. on Friday night. And it was terrifying. I was glad that he was there, this man I didn't know. And so then I was like, hey, that was kind of crazy. But he told me, he's like, this thing really works. This thing works if you work it. I was like, okay, can we try a different meeting, please? And so we went to DRU the next Monday night, and I got my first sponsor that night. And the rest is history. Thanks. Just kidding. From there on out, I was not drinking at this time. I was still smoking, and I wanted to be like the perfect AA. I wanted to say all the right things. I wanted to go to the right meetings with all the cool people and hang out with the young people. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. This is fun. But I wasn't being honest, so I was really frustrated that it wasn't working for me. I was like, I'm still super unhappy. I still don't know how to live. I still don't know how to manage my finances. Like, everybody says that life gets better, but it's not getting better. And then I was at a meeting one Tuesday night, and I never shared about smoking. I don't know if it was ever a thing or if I knew that that was something maybe that I wasn't really supposed to do, but I was doing it anyways. I talked to someone after a meeting one night, and I shared that I was doing this, and he goes, so you're not really sober then? And that was like, he took a brick and like punched it right in my face. And I was like, what? I had almost a year without alcohol, and I was like, no. Well, I am sober. I didn't want to start over. I thought that would be like a horrible, crushing thing. So I went home that night and I smoked a joint. And so I was like, I should probably find out, like, if this is going to be a thing. And it was the worst. I was paranoid. I was pissed off. I was so sad. I was mad at myself that I was, like, continuing to lie to myself like I have, I guess, for the rest of my life. I'm trying to do this thing to make myself better and to be of service in the world, but I still couldn't because I didn't understand. So the day after that was March 26, 2014, and I haven't had a drink or drug since, and life is so good. I have been through, after I had that realization, I ended up getting a new sponsor. who worked me through the steps really super fast. I was like, let's get this done. I want to sponsor people. I'm ready. So we went through the steps just like I asked, like super fast. Then I went to sponsor a woman, and I didn't feel like I was ready. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer because I didn't really feel like I fully understood the program, the book, like meetings, being of service, although I had been doing all of those things. So I got another sponsor, which I found out is totally okay to do. It's hard, though. It's like breaking up with someone. But then I realized it's always like they want what's best for me, so it's okay. This sponsor that I have currently took me through the steps, and something, I don't know if it was about her or about me and being ready in my life, but I was able to get honest and vulnerable and willing to let a higher power just, take control of my life. Because as out of control as I felt like I was, I really wanted to be in control all the time. I was like, no, I got this. And I didn't have it ever. So things now are really fantastic. I've worked through the steps. I've just now gone back to rewrite a 4th step since it's April. And I thought, after 2 years, it's like, I shouldn't have that many resentments. I'm good. I 10th step. I apologize. It's nice. It's almost as long as the first one. So there's that, progress, not perfection, as we say. But I'm really thankful, and I feel like blessed to be able to do this in my life, to sit down and look at the places where I need to improve and then want to talk to these people and make amends and live in a new way, when I never thought that I would really amount to anything. I never thought that I would be 25, actually. I didn't ever picture myself dying, but I just didn't imagine like anything past college, because college was great. And then I turned 25, and then I was like, oh man, 25. And I just turned 27? What? And now I'm 27. So, life, I wrote some stuff down, but I don't think I said any of it. It's good. It's so good. Oh, these words, self-care. That's been something that I've been really focusing on as of late. I, over the past 8 months, have transitioned jobs more than I ever have in my entire life, which is a source of terror and frustration and sadness to know that I can't pay my bills and have to ask my parents for help. But then opportunity and stress and all the things that I never thought I'd have to deal with. So knowing that it's okay to take a step back and say I need this for myself, whether that means a day off or asking for the money that I think that I'm worth, which I was never able to do before. And being in this program and knowing people in this community has empowered me to do that. And just have people to bounce ideas off of, to say, yo, my boss is crazy. Can I ask you if I should say this to her or not? And usually the answer is no. But, just to have a person, a friend, an ear to listen when I need one, and a higher power to rely on. Prayer and meditation is something that I'm constantly working on. I could definitely do more of that. I just don't want to sit alone with my thoughts for more than 6 minutes. Or 7 minutes. So that's something that I think I'm going to take on in this second and beyond year of sobriety. And then I just thought of something today. Cinco de Mayo of 2009, something. My car broke down on the freeway, and I was underage, and I was real angry because I wasn't going to get to drive to Seattle to go party with my college friends. And I was super sad, and my parents ended up buying me alcohol. They bought me a 6-pack of those Smirnoff Ice things, and I drank them all in my bed that night. It's this is good. But I was so angry that I couldn't go and drink. And today I had a car situation. My car overheats, which is not good. I'm sitting on the side of the road. I'm crying. I'm like, why am I so upset? I'm so upset because I don't want to miss a meeting. And to have that, and it's going to make me cry again. What? It's just, my life is completely 180 degrees. That's it. Opposite. 360 would be back where I started. I don't want that. It's just completely different, and it's full of love, and it's full of friends. I got to spend the weekend at my family's beach cabin with a bunch of people who I would have never known if I wouldn't have been in this program. And we were there to celebrate birthdays and living. We kayaked. We went in the water in the Puget Sound. It's 40 degrees. It's cold. But, like, this is life, and I get to experience it, and I get to be present, and it's because of this program. So, 6 seconds. Yes. 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you guys so much.
I'm Steve, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 23rd, 2015. My home group is Loyal Heights on Tuesday nights. And this is my first time speaking, so I'm a bit nervous. This is also kind of my secondary home group. I usually sit in the back. I'm one of the basket passers, so I'm used to seeing like the backs of all your heads. And so if I get kind of nervous, I might just have you guys all just turn around, and that'll make me sort of feel a little bit more at home. So thanks for inviting me to speak. What it was like, what happened, what it's like now. I grew up in Wenatchee in a upper middle class family that had unconditional love. I'm the middle child. I have 2 sisters, one of them who's also one of us. My parents, with the exception of a brief daiquiri phase in the late 90s or late 70s, were strictly beer drinkers, and the apple didn't fall far from that tree. I was what you would call a late bloomer, so I was always very self-conscious about how I measured up to other people. I never thought that I really was the same as a lot of folks. If you know the expression of a straight A student, I would say that I was more of a straight B plus student. But pretty much in anything that I did, whether it was athletics, academics, socially, whatever it was, I was very good at a lot of things, but I was never great in anything. And so, if there was first, second, and third, I always got fourth. If there were 10 people on the team, I was the 11th alternate. And so that used to chew at me a lot, but I was also, painfully shy and very introverted. And so my coping mechanism was basically to take all of that fear and frustration and just, cram it down. And have that false front that I was unaffected, where inside my head was just churning all the time. I didn't like telling people what I thought, and I absolutely hated telling people what I felt. By the same token, I was convinced that everyone cared what was going on in my head, and so I would just always have these, the future tripping, the past tripping, everything. I lived in my head 24 hours a day, and it was exhausting. High school, I hear a lot of people, I started drinking early. I didn't really start drinking in high school. I might have a beer here or there, but it really wasn't it just wasn't my scene. It was, I would go to a lot of the parties, but the parties didn't seem very fun. People were either sober or completely wasted. There was no sort of in between. And I also had a crush on a Mormon girl, and I thought that if she saw me drinking, I'd have no shot with that. So high school really wasn't. And the parties were all the same. There was always, people fighting in the parking lot, or, someone on the couch next to a pile of vomit, and the host was either passed out in another room or freaking out that the house getting trashed. And so it just was not all that appealing. So I didn't really start until I got to college. I did my freshman year at the University of Arizona. And so moving from Wenatchee to Arizona was a huge culture shock. And I got down there and I joined a fraternity. And I was at my first party, and, all of these beautiful girls are showing up, and I fell in love. And it was, up until this point, I had always been very awkward talking to pretty girls. And I still am awkward talking to pretty girls. But then I was especially awkward. But what I found is that if I had a couple of beers, it didn't matter. Because girls, schmirls, now I had beer. And so it was the beginning of so I fell in love, but I fell in love with beer. And so it was the beginning of a decade-long bromance that I had with alcohol. And so in a fraternity, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. And so I didn't miss any of the parties, but I also didn't miss any of my classes. And pretty soon I found that my behavior was, after about a semester, was different than a lot of the people that I was going to school with. I was going to class, I was making it to the midterms, I was buying the textbook, really exceptional stuff. And it was like, these people, they didn't want anything to do with school. They were just, hey, party. And I was like, nah, that's not really for me. So I came back and I transferred to U, where I thought that I would learn something. And I continued, and luckily for me, my bromance transferred with me. And that's kind of how I got into drinking. I did it the way that they describe at the beginning of A Vision for You. And it was that conviviality. It was fun for me. I wasn't doing it to escape anything. It was just part of my life. I still did well in school. I still was kind of successful from the outside. But in the inside, I was still cramming all of those fears, frustrations, feelings of anxiety, feeling of not measuring up. I was always just, pushing those down. And that's how I went for, a good 10, 15 years. After graduation, I got into home brewing. And I really liked to believe it or not, I didn't really care so much for the consumption of it. I liked the creativity that it offered me, the trying different recipes and brewing different styles. And it was, again, the beer was the icing on the cake, but the rest of the layers of that cake, family, friends, hobbies, volunteering, that stuff was sustaining me enough. The beer was just, like I said, it was the icing on the cake. Now, if I had a chance to get a corner slice that had the icing on both sides, I would certainly go for that. But it wasn't the end-all, be-all for me. It wasn't like I was, grabbing the frosting tub and eating it straight. That didn't come until later. But for that 10 and 15 years, what was happening during that time is I was creating this tremendous muscle memory and, wearing these grooves in sort of how I went about life. And so, and the constant cramming of everything was, was taking all of these fears, all these anxieties, stuffing them down and not dealing with them. And it was like taking all of this combustible material and just cramming it down. And so I'd be like, hey, I've got these gassy, rags. Where should I store it? Oh, here, let me store it way down here next to the old fireworks in the kindling. All it needed was a spark. And about 8 years ago is when the spark finally happened. And there were actually 3 of them that all kind of hit right after another. And the first was something that happened in my marriage. Not going to get into it, but it was something that my wife and I could have worked through if we probably would have gotten into counseling at that point. But oddly enough, she said, I don't want to talk to anyone about it. I don't want anyone to know about this. This is just going to be our little secret. And me, the master crammer, I was like, hey, I'm cool with that. Spark number 2 was a car accident that we've narrowly avoided. We were stuck in traffic, or traffic had come to a standstill. I aggressively braked and was able to stop in time, and I was looking in the rearview mirror, and I saw that a pickup truck behind me was barreling down and wasn't stopping. In the last minute, I said, this guy's not stopping, and we dove for the shoulder. My movement must have sort of snapped him out of it. He locked up the brakes, and he's plowed into the car in front of me. And the thing that I didn't know at the time is that there were 2 kids in the car seat, in the sedan in front of us, and they were both killed. And that, and so while that was going on, my job, I was feeling sort of lost at work and feeling trapped. And the isolationism with my wife, the survivor's guilt that I was carrying, all of this stuff that I'd been cramming down for so long, I just couldn't do it anymore. And that little voice, that 20-year-long bromance was like, hey, I can help you with that. And I don't know, at that point, if I would have said, no, thanks, I got this, and gone into therapy, if I'd be standing here today. It's probably, I have no idea. I may have crossed that line like they describe in the book where we've already gone past before we even know it. Fact of the matter is, that doesn't matter, because as soon as that became an option and I took it, then I basically removed any doubt. And that's how I was for about 8 years. It was a very, very quick downward spiral. It would be as if I was in a boat and had, if drinking is like a river, I'd always kind of stayed close to the banks. And when this happened, I just paddled out into the middle of the current. And when you first get out there, I didn't realize just how strong it was. And I couldn't really get the perspective of how fast I was getting swept downstream until I start smashing into things, rocks in the middle of the river. I was like, okay, I'm in trouble. So I grab the paddle and I start paddling for the shore, and that's when it hits me. I'm not moving. I'm in the middle of the river, and I'm going down quick. And so I kept trying and kept failing and kept trying and kept failing, kept trying and kept failing, and finally I said, screw it. I can't do it. I'm in the middle of this river. I can hear the waterfalls at the end. I've long since lost my paddles. And it's like, okay, I'm going to hold on to the boat, and I'm going to go over. And that's what it was. I'd given up. That gift of desperation that people talk about, I didn't have it. I had the curse of resignation. I was going to die. It was a slow motion suicide, and I was just, when it was going to happen, who knows. And then suddenly, fortunately, something happened. And thank God I got a DUI. And that was that was the equivalency of flipping me out of the boat, close enough to the shore that I could kind of paddle to it. And so I got into, I got back on the land, and I went, the next day after I got out of jail, well, the first thing I did, I went home and I went to sleep because I was exhausted. The next thing I did is I went to an AA meeting. And there's a lot of people in this room that were at that first meeting that I went to at Laurel Heights. And I was shaking with fear. And when I left, I was still shaking. And I still had a lot of that fear. But what I also had that I didn't have walking in is I had hope. And since then, I've done what I can to really take what comes to me. I started going to as many meetings as I could, and I started feeling a hell of a lot better. And the more meetings that I went to, the more I felt better, and stuff just kind of growing on each other and building on each other. And physical sobriety, I actually achieved it fairly quickly. Well, not fairly quickly, but in a matter of months, that physical sobriety I had. But the thing was, I was still a mess. And I was still insane. And that was the beauty of AA that has been for me, is that, yeah, AA will get you sober, but it can do so much more for you. You know, before I came in, I thought of AA as like a big dehydrator, where, you know, you basically come in, you get dried out, you get all shriveled and tough, you know, it doesn't look that appetizing from the outside, and it's kind of hard to swallow. But it actually is, it's that design for living. I mean, go back to the second step, and I saw that there was a way to, you know, to make me not insane anymore. And, you know, getting that openness, getting that honesty, getting that willingness, as long as I had that, as long as I was willing to do the work, those 9-step promises that you tell you about, they start coming true. So if you're new, a lot of this stuff may not make sense, at least program-wise. Just keep coming back, because eventually this stuff does come back. You know, I've achieved that physical sobriety. I'm working on that emotional sobriety and that spiritual sobriety. And every day gets a little bit better. I don't always do it, you know, very well. And, you know, life still isn't unicorns and rainbows. There's hard days both in the program and out of the program. But it's nowhere. I mean, it is so unbelievable, this life that I never thought that I had. I've gone way long, but there's, you know, everyone sort of has their favorite sort of stories in the back of the book, and I know a lot of people like Keys to the Kingdom, and a lot of people like, you know, Acceptance Was the Answer. But for me, it's the one, you know, it might have been worse. And it's the second to last paragraph that I just want to read, because it really sums up how I feel. When I joined AA, I did so for the sole purpose of getting sober and staying sober. I didn't realize I would find so much more, but a new and different outlook on life started opening up almost immediately. Every day seems to be so much more productive and satisfying. I get so much more enjoyment out of living. I find an inner pleasure in simple things. Living just for today is a pleasant adventure. So true. That's it.
And good evening, my name is Kevin, and I'm an alcoholic. See, Josh initially asked me about 2 months ago, and I was really excited about it because it fell 2 days after, you know, my 4-year, you know, anniversary of sobriety, and I was really excited about it. And to be honest, I'm not so excited tonight. It's just, you know, one of those weekends where I'd actually, you know, to be honest, prefer to be at home, isolating, and still feeling kind of crappy like I've been feeling all weekend. But, you know, try to be honest and keep it real, you know, like sometimes it's life, you know, being sober doesn't make everything happy, joyous, and free all the time. But, you know, I haven't given any thought to what I'm going to say tonight, and that's kind of true and kind of not true, because ever since Josh asked me like a month ago, I've been giving like fake speeches in my head every now and then, just creeping it out of nowhere. But for tonight, you know, I just want to talk about how much my life has changed being sober. I mentioned that I was going to be doing this to a gentleman in my home group, the Full Monty men's meeting, you know, Saturday morning. And he's like, make sure you get to the part when you get sober. And that was actually good advice, because the last time I spoke was at a 40-minute meeting. And I started, you know, I grew up in San Diego, you know, oldest of 3 children. I never got really to the point where I got sober. And so at the end of the meeting, they opened it up for questions, which was my favorite part of the meeting. In fact, we can do that tonight if you guys want, because it was rad. I really felt like more spontaneous. I felt more confident. But one of the questions was, have you worked the 12 steps? And nothing in my life changed, like for real, until I worked the 12 steps. Because, you know, my story, you know, I'm going to pretty much start when I got sober, because 15 minutes is a lot of time that I can get lost in with how bad it was. Because, it was so bad that, I ended up in AA, and you all know what that's like. Because this is not plan A, I would have never, come to AA because I thought it was going to work for me. I came to AA because I was at it. I was completely at the end of my rope, and I'd given up. I didn't know what to do. The short version is I was a functional alcoholic for a long, long time until I pretty much almost lost my second job back to back. I was in the restaurant industry for my whole life, moved up to management and just completely went down in flames. Called in, let go, almost happened to me again. And instead of showing up to talk to my manager and the owner of the restaurant the next morning, I didn't remember what happened the night before, but it was like a nightmare that actually happened. I won't get into details, but instead of showing up, I decided to finally say I had a problem and that I was going to go get help. So I remember making the phone call to, eventually it was Olala Treatment Center, in the parking lot of a Safeway with a 12-pack in my car, drinking and dialing because I was just shaking. I needed to drink, and that's how it was pretty much the last couple years of my drinking. Having to drink just to feel, like I wasn't absolutely going crazy. And it had long been past the point where I was drinking to feel good, but I was drinking to try to feel less worse. And that worked for a little while, but when this stuff stops working for you, you're just unraveling. There were nights at work where I was ready to just drive to Harborview after my shift was over and check myself in because I didn't know what was going on, but I was completely losing it. Just the way I felt was just unbelievable. So anyways, I went to treatment, and, finally, I thought treatment was going to fix me, just like if you have something wrong with you, medically, you go get it fixed. And it was great. It gave me 28 days clean. I was able to, try to find that peaceful, place within myself, drinking my tea, going for walks at night, something I still do and have done, almost consistently in the 7 years since I went to treatment. It's a big part of my, my program, just kind of a nightly walking meditation where I, just breathe, look up at the stars when you can see them. This time of year is beautiful. And just try to, find that gratitude and centeredness. Got out of treatment. I was introduced to AA, went to a meeting right when I got out, Agape in Ballard. It was my home group when I first got out. And, God bless Rita. I know she there's some polarized opinions, when it comes to her. But, she, really reached out. It made a huge impact on me. And we've had our ups and downs over the years, but that's a whole nother story too. Bottom line is God bless her because it's all for people. A, being here, when I, needed someplace to go, and then, B, willing to reach out and be, helpful to somebody like me who didn't have a clue as to how this whole thing worked. And they told me for years, but I still didn't get it because I wanted to do it my own way. I thought I was cured, and I thought coming to meetings would cure me, just sitting there. And then after, for some reason I drank, one night. I thought I would just have a 6-pack one Friday night. I was feeling lonely. I knew I was sick, and I was going to come back to AA the following Monday. That never happened. I think I was at for a year at that point. This was early on, about 9 months after I got out of treatment. And I came back, to Agape. It was great. And then I started, at some point, getting to the point where I got a service position. And this is really one of the things that totally changed my life, is this concept of being of service and getting a service position in a home group. I was a coffee maker. I was excited then maybe to move up to secretary, but about a month shy of my 6-month coffee commitment, I went out for a little bit, like 10 days. And, it was hard because I didn't know if I was going to be able to get back or not. This was my last relapse, a little over 4 years ago, and, 10 days it lasted. And I was in my room, alone, sleeping, drinking, totally isolated, underneath my comforter that I'd thrown up on like 3 or 4 days ago, and I just didn't care. It was one of the most depressing things you can possibly imagine, but I think this is like, this is one of the stopping off points for this disease is when you, it's just that point of, just completely giving up and accepting that. Because, we talk about what it was like, the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair that alcoholism leads to. And I just kind of got used to that. I just didn't really see a way out. But I knew I had to. And so after that 10-day relapse, it was one of the hardest things I ever did was getting back to that meeting. And because I just knew it's just like I've got a small window, of opportunity that I can come back. What I heard my sponsor say at a meeting, recently is like, this happens. And unfortunately and sadly, there are some people that go out and then when they come back in are never able to hear the message like they heard it the first time that they were in. And this is funny. I'm starting to get very emotional and tear up. I've got a 14-year-old daughter at home, and she knows I'm in AA and in recovery. Although we don't talk about it a lot. It's one of those things that, like with so many other people, like in my professional life, I keep it pretty secret. It's a huge part of who I am, but I definitely don't lead with it. And I invited my daughter to be here tonight. I said, hey Hannah, I'm gonna be giving this speech, and you could come if you want. And she's like, no, I'm good. But, we were talking about it a little more, and she's like, well, you should bring Kleenex, because you're probably going to cry. Because I'm just, I'm a sensitive guy, I've always, even completely drunk reading her bedtime stories, when she was like 3 or 4, the fairy tales of Oscar Wilde or whatever, I'll start crying, because there's so much, beauty, in life, and I have this kind of what William James refers to as a sick soul, I've got this predilection for all things sensitive and beautiful, and this is part of the, depressive nature that, kind of coexists with my disease. So, I thought it was great advice, and then then her other bit of advice was just do more of a spoken word, type of presentation. And, I got so many blessings, 5:57, God, time flies. So basically, just about how much my life has changed after working the steps. Finally, when I came back, I got desperate enough to ask for a sponsor. Thank God I have an aunt who's been in the program preceding me by about 5 years. One Thanksgiving, I was down to see her, about a month after I'd, got back into the rooms. And she told me while we were driving down the street, I think you are, ready to, to do the steps, to do this thing. Even, having been around the program for 2 years, I had no idea what that meant. But I was like, oh my God, there's more to there's a program of recovery that I haven't been working. So I found somebody that I could relate to, like their message, I like their sobriety, I like their sense of humor, asked them to be my sponsor, and started working the steps. And everything changed. Not immediately. I, went out one more time at 10 months after I started working with the sponsor. And that's because I'm an alcoholic, and I love to drink, I love to get wasted. And sometimes I have no defense. I'm better now, much better now, as long as I do this every day. Sadly, my sobriety, like everyone else, has a shelf life of only 24 hours. I forget that. I've got to do certain things all the time, which I haven't been doing. I mentioned that I wasn't feeling so hot this weekend. Well, I haven't done any of that. I haven't called my sponsor in a long time, haven't called sponsees, haven't been to a meeting, haven't even read a book. Just kind of get stuck in that feeling kind of crappy. But anyways, working the steps, everything changed. I went back to school. On my entrance interview, I was so nervous. The person that interviewed me had about 20-something years sober, and I was able to disclose that, put that on the table. I was calling my sponsor right afterwards. It's like, well, how do you think I sound? Do I sound okay? Do I sound like decent? And he's like, you sound fine, man. So I made it through, school. I, was working in the restaurant industry my whole life. I, got a master's in counseling psychology, went back, survived my internship. I've worked so hard to get where I am, in 3 months, I'm going to be finally, licensed mental health, counselor, which is blows my mind. Sometimes I still don't feel like, I'm, quite ready to take on, kind of such an adult role. But, what I'm doing now, I finally have a job, for the first time in my life that I'm excited to tell people about. I go out and work with people that are involuntarily hospitalized at some of, all King County hospitals, try to connect with them and, build a bridge back into life. And I've already, in my short time at this position, seen some heartbreaking, situations with people dealing with addiction. People that, are so fired up, gung-ho, talking the talk, and they just disappear. And, we all know where it ends up. institutions where I see them, they also end up in the jails where the people that I work with see them. And, insanity and death, it's a horrible disease. But it's also a blessing if you're able to acknowledge it and do something about it, because having, accepted my condition and work in this program, my life is so much different than it ever would have been had I been able to be a functional alcoholic my whole life. And of course, I'm referring to, the spiritual dimension of, existence, kind of what life's all about. It's just the most amazing gift. It's the most dangerous gift, you can possibly imagine. You hear some types of mental illness like bipolar referred to as a dangerous gift because it can completely spin you out and in alcoholism's case, kill you. But if you're careful, it can lead to like some of the most, beautiful episodes of enlightenment and appreciation for life possible. So, quick and short, service position saved my life. When I got this new job, I had to change home groups. Full Monty and Queen Anne, it saved my butt. I got a service position there. I was able to secretary. As a result of doing that, I got a couple new sponsees, which is great. I'm always willing to give this thing away to anybody who asks for it, I'm not the best sponsor. I'm not the best sponsee. I don't work this program perfectly, but I've done it enough for long enough that I have what I have today. And I try not to ever take that for granted because, it's that daily maintenance and it's that gratitude, just, it's amazing. And seeing all the faces in this audience, a lot of people were here when I got here. And, essentially that's kind of it. My life has changed so much, but it's not the thing, and it's got nothing to do with anything material. It's all, it's all right here, which is just the way I experience life and, who I am becoming. I heard somebody say at a meeting that they used to look in the mirror, didn't like who they'd become. I'd never felt that I'd become anything, but I have the gift of feeling like I'm becoming something now, and that person that I'm becoming is the person I've always wanted to be. So, I'm broken, I'm totally imperfect. I try to be aware of it. I've got huge blind spots. But, this program has not only saved my life, it's changed my life, and it's given me so much hope. Any further, we're going to break out the Kleenex. So thank you so much, and it's great to be here.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.